kidnapped away from the main church. Thoughts on women in the military. So we do consider you Christian, but we consider you heretics. This is such a cool question, and I don't want to scare you guys hearing the voice of angels. I cried so much. The way I dress completely changed. The Latin Mass, tribulation, pain, heartbreaking, that we're not all united in one church. Hey guys, it's Lizzie. Today I'm filming another Q&A Ask Lizzie video. I got all these questions from my Instagram, so make sure to be following my Instagram, LizziesAnswers. It's just my first and my last name. I post so many stories on there, updating you guys on my life, showing you my life. But my favorite social media by far is my Twitter, which is also my first and last name. Make sure to be subscribed to my channel. Click the bell button next to the subscribe button so that you get notifications every time I upload a new video. Let's get into the questions. Walt375. Which Protestant denomination is best theology-wise? So I would argue that the Anglican Church and Episcopal Church in general have the closest theology to Catholicism, because the Anglican Church was started because King Henry VIII wanted to get a divorce. Divorce wasn't allowed in the Catholic Church, so he created his own church separate from the Catholic Church. But that was kind of it. They didn't have grand, huge changes in theology like other Protestant churches have. Do priests have to go to confession? Absolutely. Priests are human like everyone else. They sin, they mess up, they can be evil. Loads of priests will be in hell. We have seen through the sex abuse crisis that being a priest or bishop says nothing about your moral integrity, doesn't dramatically change your actions. I think priests will actually be held the most accountable on Judgment Day because they have the most knowledge and understanding of sin. Do you think it's okay to date someone who's not Catholic or Christian? Absolutely. The church recognizes those marriages as valid. It doesn't necessarily encourage you to date someone who's not of the faith, but they definitely support it. And I know that so many people have converted into Catholic Christianity because of being married for decades to someone who is Catholic. And so it's totally possible that they will convert, but you cannot go into the marriage or go into the relationship expecting them to convert. You have to love them exactly where they're at. What is the hardest part of practicing your faith as a young adult? Because you know, with so much temptation and bad things happening all around, it can be hard. So I know that who you surround yourself with will make it either easier or harder to remain a Christian, to stick to those convictions, and to not blend in and adapt to how the world is living. The way I dress completely changed because I was living in an apartment and becoming really close to two people who were not Christians and not practicing the faith, and it really rubbed off on me in how I talked and how I dressed and how I thought of people. And being away from that situation makes it so much easier to be even more passionate in my faith. But I think as well, you can't exclude non-Christians from your life, but you have to make sure that you have a lot of really close friends who are Christian. And I think at that time, for the past couple years, I didn't know that many Catholics who are my age. There's just not a lot of people our age who are Catholic, and so it's really hard. Like, I have my boyfriend who's the closest person to me, and he gives me the absolute most support and pushing me to be better and better and stronger and to read more and more into the faith. But I don't have loads of close Catholic friends, and that's what's so hard and that's what's so sad, because the people around you completely affect you. Michelle Sunshine Star 57A, make cleaning videos, especially how to use microfiber cloths, especially in the kitchen. Oh my gosh, so I have been teasing a cleaning routine video for so long, and I've been trying to get sponsored by some of the companies that make my favorite cleaning supplies. But even if that doesn't happen, I definitely need to make a cleaning routine video because I love cleaning. I'm so passionate about cleaning. I think it's so fun, and so I want to inspire you guys to just enjoy and feel so much flourishing in every single area of your life, including cleaning. This is such a cool question. Shia Carol, if you weren't Catholic, would you use a surrogate to carry your children so that you could continue your bipolar medication? Or do you have reasons against it outside of your Catholic ethics? So I would say that before I was Catholic, I was not at all against in vitro fertilization, and I did not see an embryo as a life or as a person, so I had no qualms with in vitro fertilization or a surrogate. As I've researched more and more, I've realized that, and I don't want to scare you guys or be negative, but obviously I'm gonna find a Catholic psychiatrist and ask when I'm getting married and getting pregnant and stuff, but there really are not that many bipolar meds that you can be on when pregnant. And I don't have sex, obviously, in my dating relationship because I'm not married, but when I do get married, I'm going to have sex, and that's supposed to help balance out bipolar, so maybe that would help. But it's really scary, and I would definitely consider a surrogate. It was never something that I really wanted to do. I think that it would be something I would be afraid to do though, because I'm so into health and I'm going to have a vegan pregnancy, and so not being in complete control of what the other person is eating and how they're affecting the baby, whether or not they're working out, are reasons that I would not want to, but I would definitely consider if I was in a horrible state with my bipolar. I also really want to adopt children, so I think that if I wasn't Catholic, I might not have any biological children and just adopt. That would probably be what I would do to get around the not being medicated thing. Morgan Johnson 0416. How does the Catholic Church view Protestant Christians? This is a huge question, and I'm actually going to make a 2-part series. The titles are going to be, are Protestants Christians? Are Protestants going to hell? In the Catechism, Protestants are referred to as our separated brothers and sisters. So we do consider you Christians, but we consider you heretics, which sounds like a really bad word, but it's just the term that is used if you're in theological error. So that's what we believe. And we believe that there's not an invisible church, but that there's one physical church that is the Catholic Church that was originally started by Jesus. And so it's really heartbreaking and sad that we're not all united in one church, the same with the Orthodox Christians. Like, it's literally heartbreaking. I cried so much feeling like I'd been lied to and kind of kidnapped away from the main church when I was converting. And so I want everyone to have the experience of finding the fullness of the faith. But there's a quote in the Catechism regarding who's going to heaven or hell. Those who, through no fault of their own, do not know of Christ or his church may obtain eternal salvation. So basically that's saying that we don't know either way. We're not saying 100% all these people are going to hell who are not Catholic, but we're also not saying that everyone's going to hell or that hell's going to be empty. That's one of the things I really like about Catholic theology. It's very agnostic about your faith. Even if you're a Catholic right now and you're following all the teachings of the church, participating in all the sacraments, you don't know if in the future you'll completely leave the faith. So we don't know, we're not secure in that type of permanent way. Who do you consider a modern day saint? Bishop Barron. Matthew Cornick 2. Do you like the Latin Mass and how come? God bless. I love Latin Mass so much. In 2017, I went to Latin Mass for about 5 months. I really love the ornate vestments, how they use incense most of the time. I love how the choir is not at the front, but they're kind of on top by the organ in the balcony thing, and so it's almost like being in heaven and hearing the voice of angels. I love how it's very contemplative, how at Latin Mass when you walk in and when the service ends, there's silence and everyone can just pray together. And I also love that the church has its own language, because Latin is a dead language, but the Vatican and the Catholic Church as a whole, like, we're actually a country, we're actually a kingdom. So the fact that we have a flag and a language is so epic, and so I love as well when Latin is incorporated into regular Mass. Rachel Cunningham, thoughts on women in the military? Yes. I am for equality, and so women should be in the military. Obviously, there's certain units that only men should be in because women are not as strong as men. Definitely some women can train to be as strong as men, and so if that's possible, definitely go join the Navy SEALs. But I totally understand that there's certain units that women might not be physically capable of being a part of. But in general, if we're an equal society and if you're a feminist, you should definitely want women in the military. Apologetics guy, what is your top challenge when it comes to explaining or defending your faith? Definitely the sinlessness of Mary. That's the hardest one to defend. It's the one that people get the most angry at, and it's so hard to communicate with people about the Marian dogmas because people get so sensitive about it and so emotional, and so they're already at a place where they're not wanting to listen a lot, so it's really hard to get that across. And when it comes to the sinlessness of Mary, her birth that wasn't painful, her being the new Eve, this whole concept of Mariology, of Mary theology, of Mary being the Queen of Heaven, all of this is completely foreign to the majority of Protestants. So you kind of have to start on the ground and start gradually building a foundation to be able to understand any of these concepts of the Marian dogmas. And so you really have to have someone who's willing to listen for a long time and who's willing to be open about it. And I found that that's really rare. Sarah Hi Andrade, is something considered a sin even though the person committing the sin doesn't know it's a sin? This is such a great question. So I think that the actual action has ramifications and permanent damage regardless of whether or not it's intentional or the person is meaning to do it, knows what they're doing wrong. But in Catholicism, we make a distinction between mortal sin that will send you to hell versus venial sin, regular sin, and everything's also on a spectrum. So I personally don't like categorizing things like that because I think that you should be aiming to live a virtuous life, and if you feel very guilty or you did something horrible that caused a lot of damage, just go to confession. Don't be like, oh, is this actually a mortal sin? I think we should be utilizing confession. It's healing. It's going to Jesus, who's a doctor in a physical form. Like, it's amazing to go to confession if you've really hurt yourself or hurt other people. It's this grand healing. So I'm not at all saying this to say, don't go to confession, but for something to be a mortal sin, you have to have complete knowledge of what you're doing that is wrong, not be in a compromised mental state, like if you're on drugs or if you're in a manic episode, if you're bipolar, that's not a mortal sin. But obviously everything's on a spectrum. So I hope that answers that question. Rachel Cunningham, best tips for being less nervous before confession. Pray and pray and pray and ask your patron saint and Mary and anyone else who's in heaven to be with you and to be praying with you as you walk into the confessional and as you're there. Because I was really nervous my first confession, sometimes I still am, and so I always ask my patron saint and Mary to pray for me and to help me feel peaceful and to be able to talk clearly and give a good confession. Naomi F90. I would love a video on vegan food budgeting and or how you became vegan. It might inspire me. I recently made a video of my grocery haul as a vegan, which I calculated is only $4 a day to eat as a vegan. So I will link that video here and below. And also I have an entire playlist of my whole vegan journey, vegan recipes. I just uploaded a video of vegan fettuccine alfredo, this recipe that I created. So definitely go watch all my vegan videos. I have everything and more of what you want me to talk about. Chris Birch. What is your favorite song off Lover? So that is the new Taylor Swift album. Definitely Afterglow. It's a song about asking for forgiveness after really hurting someone in a relationship. I love apologies so much, and so many people are horrible at apologizing. And so this is a great example of the right way to apologize, where you take ownership of what you did. It's so great. And I feel like now if I ever hurt Trevor, I think of this song and it motivates me to give a really good apology and to have so much compunction, feel so bad about what I did. Cow Stan, how do you manage stress? Prayer, prayer, and prayer. For so much of my life, I can be going through something so damaging and painful, traumatic, stressful, awful. Either someone I love is really hurting from something, one of my subscribers sends me a message of something horrible happening in their life, or I'm going through something awful. During those times, if I just spend 15, 20, 30 minutes just bringing everything before God, telling him what is hurting me, asking for his intercession, just connecting with him in prayer in such an intimate way, I'm able to feel this extreme amount of peace. Even though surrounding me there's all this chaos and pain and hurt and stress, I can be so peaceful and still and protected with the strength of peace in that situation. I want to read some quotes from The Interior Castle. It's a book by St. Teresa of Avila about prayer and humility. She has a lot of things to say that describe that feeling I've had for most of my life of being peaceful. This is so epic. So she thinks of the soul as each layer of a castle, and you're trying to get to the most intimate part of God, of your soul, and of interacting with God. And so the outer layers are filled with a lot of stress and tribulation, pain, fighting with temptation. It's a pretty stressful place. But as you get closer and closer to the middle of the castle, here's what she says. It could be that the soul is fully present with God in the innermost chamber, while the mind stays on the periphery of the palace, grappling with 1,000 wild and dangerous creatures and gaining real merit from this kind of struggle. The spirit of evil would like nothing better than for you to just give up at this point and abandon spiritual practice. Don't lose heart. The purpose of these analogies is for you to consider if you have truly detached yourself from the world, from these things that are bothering you and hurting you so much. It's a matter of practicing the virtues, of surrendering to God in everything, of bringing our lives into harmony with whatever His majesty arranges for us, of desiring that His will, not ours, be done. Maybe we have not yet evolved this far. Humility, I say. Humility is the ointment for our wounds. So not assuming that we can get through things on our own, but knowing that it's so obvious that we have to trust God constantly, be praying to Him constantly to ask Him to intercede for us and to give us peace and comfort when we cannot do it on our own. And in this sense, she's not talking about humility as this lofty concept, but just being realistic with ourselves about how we need God. The truth is, all this turmoil does not hinder my prayer or interfere with what I'm trying to say. Instead, my soul is whole within its quietude, its love, its longing, and its clarity of consciousness. So those are some sections from St. Teresa of Avila's book that I really relate to. Next, I'm going to read a Bible verse from Philippians 4, and it's so interesting. I'm just realizing this as I'm filming this. So in Philippians 2, there's something called the Christ hymn, and I was talking about this in my live stream last night. It talks about how Jesus, being in the nature of God, did not consider equality with God as something to be grasped, but made himself nothing, becoming a servant, coming into earth as a man, becoming obedient even to death on a cross. So it's this amazing image of look how humble Jesus can be. We need to attempt to be that humble. So then in 2 chapters later, it's talking about prayer and trusting God in prayer and our need for relying on God. Rejoice in the Lord always. I shall say it again, rejoice. Your kindness should be known to all. The Lord is near. Have no anxiety at all. Do not worry about anything, but in everything, by prayer and petition, with thanksgiving, present your requests to God. The peace of God that surpasses all understanding will guard your hearts and minds in Christ Jesus. Isn't that epic? And of course, when we're dealing with generalized anxiety disorder, panic attacks, OCD, this is not talking about mental illness at all. It's talking about general anxiety, general worry that people without an anxiety disorder will go through and struggle with. Other things in addition to spiritual practices that really help with reducing stress. Getting enough sleep every night, having a consistent sleep schedule, working out every day, doing cardio really helps with stress, with anxiety, with bipolar, with any type of mental illness, with depression. Also making sure you are eating enough, eating healthy. And the whole prayer thing, you just realize reality and priority, how this life is so short and transient and it will be over so soon. And so we're so concerned with all these things of the world, when really God is control and His will be done, but it might be different than what we want God's will to be, and that's when it gets painful and stressful. Raphael George, what are your plans for the future, both for your channel and yourself? So I'm going to be making a lot more videos on bipolar disorder. I kind of took a hiatus for a couple years where I didn't consistently upload videos about it just because I was so emotionally drained and scarred, having to remember things over and over again when I was finally at a healthy place in my life. So I'm definitely going to go back to bipolar videos. I've also been taking a break from making a lot of intense theology-rich videos. I just made my video on why Mary was assumed up into heaven. That video took me about 60 hours to research, write the script, film, edit. It's such an intensive process, and sometimes it just gets so exhausting. making videos that are that intense, but I'm definitely going to go back to making a lot of theology and spiritual videos. Back to the core of my channel and Myers-Briggs. I'm going to continue my Myers-Briggs series. But my plans for my future, I guess my YouTube channel is my future, so that's why I got so excited by that question. But currently, I'm a campus minister, an associate campus minister at 3 different colleges. It's a part-time job, but it's going to take up so much of my passion and emotions and time, and I'm so excited to pour into college students and start up flourishing campus ministries. And the biggest thing that's going to change in me to do that job is to be even more and more humble and to constantly rely on God and all the saints in my prayers, asking everyone to pray for me, praying for hours to make sure that it takes off, just because these schools are so liberal, have barely any Catholics, and so if anything happens through me, it's going to be because of prayer, because so many saints are praying for me, because God's power is working through all the students and through me and through the priest I'm working with. Last question, Antonio842016. What would you say to someone who belongs to your old church when they ask you, why did you convert to Catholicism? My wife belongs to the Church of Christ, and we get into it sometimes with debating each other. So Church of Christ, their main thing is going by the Bible and being the early church. That's the most important thing. That the theology and practices of Church of Christ is the original church that Jesus established. So if you're starting from that premise, if you just define and explain that the practices of the early church were the Catholic theology, and if you can point to all these Bible verses that refute sola scriptura, that you find apostolic succession, bishops, real presence in the Bible, then that completely breaks down their argument. And I'm going to link below and up in the cards my 60+ videos on Catholic theology in which I refute so many of the claims of Church of Christ. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. Make sure to thumbs up this video, click the bell button next to the subscribe button. I love you guys so much, and I will see you in my next video. Bye!